I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Hi everybody, this is Steve Owens from Fascination Street Podcast. I really appreciate your listening to the show. I'm having a lot of fun getting to talk to some really fascinating people, and I want to continue doing this, but I need your help. I need you to subscribe and tell people about the show. But the biggest thing you can do to help me is to rate and review the show on iTunes or wherever you listen through. As a special thank you, anyone who rates and/or reviews the show, send me a screenshot as proof and I will mail you a set of 3 pair of silk cufflinks courtesy of my friends at Menlo House. You can send it via Twitter to @FascinationSTPD, via Instagram to FascinationStreetPod, or email me at FascinationStreetPod@gmail.com. I really appreciate all of you for listening and for helping. Thank you so much. Now let's get to this week's guest. Welcome back, guys. This episode is with actor Ali Agirnas. You know Ali from such hit TV series as NBC's The Brave, AMC's Longmire, and Netflix's Godless. In this episode, Ali tells us about growing up in Turkey and Germany, what led him to come to America, and how he became super successful selling handmade Oaxacan rugs in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Of course, we get into why he decided to move from that career into acting, and how that's going for him. So enjoy, guys. This is Ali Agirnas.
Yeah, talk to me, yeah.
Welcome to the show, Ali Agirnas. Am I saying your last name right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Fantastic. Ali, I appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us on Fascination Street so we can get to know you a little bit better. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. I had a beautiful morning just with you guys, so it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, the pleasure is all mine, I promise. You grew up in Istanbul, Turkey, right?
Yes, I grew up in Istanbul, Turkey partially. I was born there, but at a fairly young age, we did move to Germany because I had both German and Turkish parents.
Oh, one of each?
One of each. I spent summers in Istanbul, but mainly grew up in Germany.
Gotcha. One did you like better?
I think it goes back to we always want what we can't have, so in that case, we couldn't have Turkey all the time, so it was going back for the summer vacation, and it was at the beach, so there was no responsibility as kids, and it was beautiful and sunny, so I much enjoyed Turkey, but there were also great parts about Germany.
Very cool. Well, I have not been to either one of those places, and I'm jealous.
They're both very nice places, a lot of culture and history, very friendly people, great food in Turkey, lots of beautiful places to see, the cradle of civilization right there in Asia Minor. A lot of great back histories of different people. Wonderful places to visit. About 3,000 kilometers of ocean line, and lots of history and friendly people, like I said.
Well, that is a very sweet way to represent that place.
Yeah.
So, you went to high school in Germany, but you were... I'm confused about how it's... Because I know that you did a little bit of shuffling back and forth during your school years, but how did that work out exactly?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of tied to my dad's business. Initially, when we moved from Turkey, he actually owns one of the larger commercial ad companies in Istanbul, Turkey. It was kind of like a Mad Men of Istanbul in that sense in the 70s. So he had to go back and forth a bit, and that sometimes coincided with summer vacation, sometimes it didn't. So mostly, though, we spend our summer vacations, which typically in Europe, they're a little bit shorter, about 6 weeks instead of the 2 to 3 months we're used to here in the States. And we would go and spend part of that time in Istanbul with a lot of family, of course, aunts and uncles and cousins. And then we had a beautiful little vacation home outside of Istanbul, little on the European side, about an hour and a half west. And that's where most of my time as a child in Turkey kind of passed. So I have very fond memories of being at the beach and growing up with the same friends and teenage stuff.
Very cool. When did you decide to come to America?
That wasn't until after I graduated high school. I was studying engineering at the time when a cousin of mine approached me and said, hey, what are you going to do with this engineering? Why don't you come work for your dad? Which at that time was actually, he was a rug merchant at that point in Germany because the ad agency, due to some economic difficulties in the 70s, had closed. And I went into sales. So I ended up working for my dad for about 2.5, 3 years. And what he did was he didn't cater to the to the German public. He only sold to all the U.S. officers stationed in Germany. So I kind of grew up around the U.S. military forces in Europe. And then it wasn't until I was about 21 years of age when I came over to New Mexico directly.
And why did you pick New Mexico?
It was a bit of a coincidence, if there's such thing. Sometimes I believe there isn't. Somebody I knew had gone to a private school in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I had never heard of New Mexico nor the school. It was kind of time to fly the nest, working for my dad. Then eventually grow up and it's time to do our own thing. So I just decided to fly, basically. And this opportunity for this private school presented itself. So I enrolled. It took about 2 semesters at the school in Santa Fe and then ended up staying there.
Now, is that the Nozomi School of Global Consciousness?
Yes, it was called the Nozomi School of Global Consciousness. Nozomi is a Navajo word, and it means the beauty way. So it's very esoteric in that sense, New Age. But it did cater like a global community type of education, new energy sources, new ways of thinking, breaking down old boundaries and borders, that type of thing. And it was a small pool of students from probably about 2 or 3 different countries, 2 or 3 dozen different countries from around the globe, kind of learning global leadership type education at the school. So,
wow, that sounds really cool.
It was really cool. It was fascinating to meet a lot of very interesting, bright, lots of good common sense type of individuals at all different ages, and be able to work with them and learn from one another. I really enjoyed my time there.
Sounds like a lot of out-of-the-box thinking going on there.
It was. It really was. And I think I needed it at the time as well because, everyone comes from whatever background and we come with whatever limitations that we grew up with in our own way of thinking. So being able to embrace new ideas and learn and grow is paramount, I think, especially in this day and world.
Absolutely. So your dad sold rugs to the U.S. military in Turkey. So Turkish rugs, I'm assuming?
He actually sold them to U.S. military in Germany. And these were handmade rugs from pretty much all around the old world, Turkish, Afghani, even Chinese, lots of beautiful handmade rugs. And as a child, of course, when he had switched from the ad company, that was really his profession. And like I said, due to some economic difficulties, he switched in the late 70s because the Turkish currency went and his business wasn't Turkish. So he had to do something new. His family in the old days had somehow been invested in rugs from the part of Turkey that he had come from. So he went kind of back to the roots. And me growing up around my dad's business, I was always involved even as a teenager, somehow flipping rugs or going to the markets at the officers' clubs at Ramstein or Wiesbaden or Heidelberg or some base in Germany. And then when the time came and my cousin asked me to join the business, I joined and learned a lot of great things about a lot of different things.
So when did you decide to start selling rugs on your own here in the U.S.?
Soon after I left the Nozomi school, I had to basically, and I was a student at the time, and it was kind of time to do something for myself. And I started selling rugs at a small store in Santa Fe, which is kind of like a mecca for art. A lot of people from all around the country come, even all around the world, come shopping in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Beautiful art, silver, portrait, painting, sculptures. They have the Indian market there every year. They have the Spanish market there. So it's a very beautiful place, very quaint, resorty type of place up at a 7,500-foot altitude area at the foot of the Rocky Mountains. So it's a beautiful place, and I decided to just do that for myself after a while because I was like, my background, I learned a lot from my dad. I learned by selling for others. It was time to do it for myself, so I just actually picked up and went down to southern Mexico. Did some research, of course. I didn't just jump on an airplane. went to a very small village outside of Oaxaca, Mexico, called Teotitlán del Valle, which is a Zapotec village. That's the type of indigenous people there. And they had a 2,000-year history of weaving. So, initially I bought from them, made friends, and then over a period of close to 15 years, I converted the business to be a custom design rug business rather than just buying and selling. I would always still buy and sell some exquisite pieces that some master weaver made, but mostly I started buying yarns and dyes, and then often also sketching my own designs, sometimes taking old designs and converting them to new color palettes, taking yarns, working with master weavers, and have them custom made, even for my clientele. And it was very successful for many years.
That sounds amazing. As we speak, I'm wearing a necklace that I got in Santa Fe at, I think it's called like the Governor's...
The Palace of the Governors.
Yeah, that. I got it in May on a little road trip my wife and I took there. That place is beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Even that museum inside the Palace of the Governors is a fantastic place to come visit and learn about the older U.S. history, because there's a lot of Spanish conquistador influence with a lot of the old Pueblo cultures that were already indigenous in that area when they came. And then so there's a lot of different mixed culture there that is definitely worthwhile learning about. I think wonderful people, great flavor. The food in New Mexico is amazing. I think some of the best in the country. Might be a little biased, but it's definitely fantastic. And also I don't know if you remember when you were there, but at the foot of the Palace of the Governors, right outside under that portal, you had a lot of the native Pueblo people selling their jewelry. Did you remember seeing them?
That's where I got this necklace, was from them.
No, that's awesome, yeah. So it's actually a genuine piece, handmade. That's amazing.
Yep, it's gorgeous. And the money went to them, not somebody else.
That's fantastic because, sometimes you just don't never know where the money goes these days. So, yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's my favorite piece of jewelry.
Sweet.
Okay, so you're very successful in selling these rugs.
Uh-huh.
What made you decide to get into show business?
So actually, I had fallen into acting in Albuquerque one day at an agency, dropping off headshots for my now ex-wife, but my first wife, and she had studied just one semester at the Playhouse in New York, and she had an agent in Albuquerque, and they asked me if I had done this, and I said no. My sisters, both of my sisters, grew up in commercial acting and modeling and so forth, and I said no, but then they actually kind of convinced me I should definitely get into it. So initially there was a lot of commercial acting locally, print ads, stock photography, TV ads for healthcare, banks and so forth. So I was very successful in that. And then a bit later, I got into film acting, independent film and so forth for quite a while before I got into a much better agency. And then, became SAG through Longmire in New Mexico. That was in 2014.
What is it about acting that drew you to it?
It wasn't an accident because I was always feeling like a certain lack of creativity that wanted to be expressed personally, not just through making rugs or having them custom made. When I found acting, it really spoke to me because of the sense of creating this collaborative art with other actors that was deeply fulfilling to me. It's of course stuck with me since, and like they say, if you get bit by the bug, and kind of unlucky for you, but it's kind of true, because if you have a passion for it and a love for it, then that's kind of what happened to me. I did theater and then independent film, and much later in TV. But I definitely have a sense of that longing, that feeling of creating together, telling a story with others, making art.
What happened to your business?
So the business, it was actually nothing bad happened. It was something bad happened to the country. As you remember, in 2008, the whole economy went. And as I was selling very high-quality handmade rugs, it was more difficult to sell them at the time because people were very hard hit economically, and they often opted to get different imported pieces rather than genuine handmade pieces or artistic, unique pieces that were quite pricey sometimes. So I sold the rest of my inventory and decided to get out of it. It was just time to do something else also after close to 20 years of being in some sort of sales, counting all the years together that I've been with my father and other people in my own business. So I just wanted to try something else and then decided to focus on acting.
Well, that makes sense. Let's talk about your time on Longmire.
Okay. I got to be on 3 different episodes on Longmire.
And where did that shoot? Was it in New Mexico?
They were all shot in New Mexico. The show actually officially takes place in Wyoming, but a lot of similarities in nature between the two places. So it was a bit up north from Santa Fe in a place called Pecos, New Mexico, that 2 of the episodes were shot. And the other one was shot actually at an old courthouse in Santa Fe.
Oh, cool. I'm actually going to Wyoming in a couple of weeks.
Nice. And, I hear it's beautiful. All the time I spent in New Mexico, being in sales, people will always come and tell me about how beautiful Wyoming is, and especially Jackson Hole, I hear, is amazing. I have never been, but I hope one day I can go myself.
I have not been either, and I'm looking very much forward to it. I also hear it's gorgeous. And the weather, compared to here, right now it's 100 degrees in San Antonio, but where I'm going in Wyoming, it's like 81.
Nice. That is high, yeah. For those, I think everywhere the temperature is kind of high right now.
Pretty crazy.
That's what I keep hearing. I'm in LA currently, and it's like 80, 81, but it feels hot this morning and very humid. And I think that had some really hot days this year. I've heard actually cousins up in Ojai, they said it was 113 degrees one day, and then somebody else told me it was 106 last month one day here in Los Angeles, which must have been insanely hot.
Yeah, that's crazy. Somebody posted a picture yesterday here in San Antonio. It was 109 on the highway.
Oh, wow. That's a lovely city there. I visited San Antonio. It was actually a family reunion on my wife's side of the family, 2008 or so, and I really enjoyed it there. It was beautiful. A lot of history there as well.
There is a lot of history. I think this year we're celebrating 300 years as a city.
That's amazing. I didn't realize the long history also the missionaries had with all the local native populations when they first settled the area.
Yeah, a lot of people think that the Alamo is by itself solitary, but it was just like one of 5 or 6 different missions. So, yeah, we have a rich history. What are you doing in LA right now?
I just recently moved here. I decided to kind of tackle this market and learn as much as I can, see if I can secure some roles maybe, somehow start auditioning to LA casting networks, self-submitting right now. Of course, it's much harder in this much bigger market, even to find a good agent out here. So I'm eligible in this market. I am non-union right now. I'm union in New Mexico through all the work I've done there, but it's a little bit treated separately, so which gives me a little bit of an opportunity to also exploit the non-union opportunities here for the time being. Actively looking for agents, managers, making connections, taking classes at the Upright Citizens Brigade and also at the Ivana Chubak studio. So learning as much as I can, really.
Well, that's amazing. I'm very surprised that SAG and AFTRA are regionally separated like that.
Yeah, they actually, each region has I don't know how many regions there are, and I'm not that familiar with all the breakdowns, but yeah, usually it's in the state that you are, and then I think they have maybe some states merged together because there's just not enough work there, but Los Angeles is treated separately. I could join any moment just by, I think it's just paying a difference of membership dues from state to state, but so far there hasn't been an impetus to do so, and I was here in May taking classes at the UCB and Ivana Chubak Studios, and I did an intensive theatrical agents presentation or workshop, and I got to be in front of a couple of different agents, and one of them spoke to me and 4 other people after our monologue scene and so forth, and he asked, why do you all just keep on joining SAG? And back then it just didn't click. Well, I don't know why, but in the heat of the moment I didn't clarify with him that I was not Los Angeles SAG at the time, which now I understand that it just meant more opportunity at the time, because you can take non-union jobs when you're not SAG at the in the state right now. And I hear there's a lot more work for non-union at this moment, at least.
Oh, I was going to ask. So there is a decent amount of work for non-union actors?
It seems to be. Well, I literally just started. Actually, it's less than 10 days old that I've moved here. I basically spent a few days setting up an apartment and getting my bearings, and then also taking UCD classes, and then literally just signed up for the LA casting networks, which I was part of the casting networks in New Mexico before through my agent, but I just signed up literally 2 days ago. So I started submitting myself yesterday, and there seems to be a fair amount of breakdowns. I got 29 notifications yesterday, and there were maybe about a dozen out this morning. So I need to just start working on them and kind of like running a business. It's no different than running a business. Acting, there are all different aspects. There's the training, there's the marketing, there's the networking. There are all kinds of facets that, and especially coming from a much smaller market, I need to learn this entire market over. It's not like I know acting here, you know. That's a craft. And one of the interesting things that the agent told me when I asked him a couple of questions about it, and he said, "You guys think that talent books the job? Everybody's got talent." So he was basically insinuating it's often much more about who you know and the connections you can bring to these agencies as well, for them to have an impetus to want to sign you and also bring them income. Basically, at the end of the day, it's all going to be, on that side of the business, it's going to be all about money for them. You know, they're trying to make a living, so like everybody else. So they're going to want to be economically motivated to sign, especially a newcomer who has not much presence in a much bigger market than them.
Do you think that your success as a business owner and an entrepreneur, do you think that's going to help you when you're trying to learn the new market and kind of get in with the LA scene?
I'm hoping that some of it might help. I think just the fact that since I came here as an immigrant, you know, as a young man, and always have to kind of like make do and network and meet people and make new friends, and just that aspect is going to help a bit. And I just believe in hard work paying off. You know, a lot of the people in the room with this agent when we did the intensive were a bit put off by his tone. He was a bit blunt. I took it more as an educational experience and kind of thanked him. I said, you know, I kind of needed this perspective change. That way I can gear myself differently and make the necessary adjustments to this new market and approach it that way. So we can always take whatever lesson that we want. We can take it as a criticism, or we can say, hey, you know, I can take this from this and learn that much and maybe do that different, and then hopefully B will go different next time instead of how it went last time type of thing.
Gotcha. When you are casting things, are you expecting them to be immigrant or bad guy roles?
That's an interesting question, right? Especially as an immigrant. I mean, in literature, I studied, my undergrad in college was foreign language and literatures, and then I nearly completed a master's in literature as well. Ended up deciding not to want to finish it, and there was no particular reason. It was time to make money again. And in literature, there's identity. Question of identity is really important, right? Just like in any film too, because I mean, it's all writing that we're dealing with, and it's the norm versus the other. So you have the status quo, which I'm entering, right? And that makes me automatically the identity of the other. So it's often a bit more tricky to get accustomed and be accepted by the norm or the status quo when you come from the outside. That's one thing that I can personally say. I've never really felt that I fit any specific norm. So yeah, it's often going to be probably marginalized to like immigrants, and there's a little bit of an accent, and I'm hoping there's going to be enough work because stories need to be told. And I think especially what we see on the global stage now, with the world becoming a smaller place and all these issues that are global are actually issues that are also issues here, that the other is really not that different. We need to bring them closer in and make certain that we understand that even though they seem different, they are part of the story, and they're really very similar stories that also need to be told and are quite enjoyable and can be understood. So I'm thinking and answering yes. I think I will probably be marginalized because that's kind of what I've experienced all throughout my life, but not in a negative tone, thinking, oh, I'm going to be marginalized. I'm just going to want to always work with that and see if I can break down some barriers and help. It's all about learning and growing, and I think it's both sides of the spectrum, you know, for the status quo and for the other as well in literature. So, and that is also in society.
The reason I was asking is because I feel like here in the U.S. we sort of have a tendency or a penchant of making the bad guys all foreigners.
Well, you know, it has to do a lot with our history here in America, the way we became a nation, the role we have played globally since becoming a nation, and throughout a couple of world wars that were where we kind of took leadership on the global stage. And now we're actually on the brink of losing it because of stubbornness, rigidity, clinging to not wanting to include others and so forth. And without wanting to get too political, it's definitely important. We want to make sure that we embrace. It cannot be inclusive. It has to be. It cannot be exclusive. It has to be all inclusive. That's the problem. Just because we don't want to deal with certain things doesn't mean they go away. They exist, and that's true for also film. You need to. I think it just enriches the whole art when we can do that.
I agree. Let's talk about Godless for a little bit.
Okay.
When you go out with your friends and eventually the conversation turns to what are you watching on TV or what movies have you seen lately? And probably 7 out of 10 people who I've talked to in the last month mention Godless as something that they're watching. That show
that's awesome.
That show is pretty big right now. What was it like to get to work on that show and specifically with Jeff Daniels?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, I auditioned for it, and they actually booked me off of my first audition on that, which I didn't expect because I think 2 or 3 months went by, and I hadn't heard. So I totally forgot about that audition. And then I got my agent called and told me that I had been booked off of it, and I was totally thrilled, of course. I had no idea at that time that I was going to be working with Jeff Daniels. It wasn't until really we were on stage kind of that late in the game that I realized that I was going to have this scene with him. And it was a very enriching and humbling experience. Also, he's an amazing guy. He actually talked to me quite a bit in between like a couple of the takes where they're resetting the stage. So I feel very fortunate to have had that chance because I think he's an amazing, tremendous actor. One of my favorite scenes he's ever done is on The Newsroom. His opening, I think it was the pilot, his opening monologue where he's sitting in a news conference and everybody's bombarding him with questions and he goes, "You want to know the truth?" And he opens up and he just does this monologue that is just like breathtaking and gives you the goosebumps. So, and he can portray so many different characters, and I'm a big fan of his. And it was great to be able to work with him. And then on set, I mean, we spoke for maybe about half an hour between the resetting of the scene, and he was kind enough. Actually, I was kind of the last one standing after that last scene we had done, and everybody dispersed, and people were setting up and taking away, and I just hung out. And about a minute and a half later, I hear the take, and I looked around, I couldn't see anyone, and then I hear another hit, and it was coming from under one of the wagons. He had sat down under the wagon, kind of not hiding, but it was hard to see, and he called me over, and then we started talking for a while and paid me a compliment, which to me was amazing. He said, "Hey, good job." I'm like, "Oh my God, really, from you?" I said, "That's amazing." I said, "From you, that's just like surfing. You go, and I just go right with you, So it was definitely good work. It felt great while we were acting, so it was very connected. And I felt like I learned a lot from him, especially the advice he gave me and so forth.
Man, that's cool. That scene, particularly the I guess the first scene that you're in, that's a very intense scene. Did you have to do anything special to prepare for that?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, you have to, it's like you always have to work on your apparatus. It's like going to the gym. You want to be able to connect. Connecting is very, very important. Also, it's true what they say about breathing. So you need to be doing a lot of things to prepare for the work for that day. But then in the thing itself, it's really important that you truly connect to your co-actors or lead actors, so that it is genuine, and then you're just living truthfully in the moment. It's not about thoughts; it's about feeling. It's about you're telling a story with feelings, and the words are secondary. So it's really important that you're present. Being able to work with like an actor like Jeff, and also my co-actors who were amazing, Sean Colleen Young, Trina Christensen, Sarah Minnick, the people that played the other Norwegians in my family that day. They were all great actors who I've known locally, and it was great to work with them on that set as well. So it made it much easier when you have good collaboration, good storytelling, good art. Then it makes it much easier, much more fulfilling to be doing it. Yeah, it was very fortunate. I'm still humbled and very thankful to have been on that show.
Well, you did a phenomenal job. You knocked it out of the park. I think that's a limited series, so is it over?
Unfortunately, I think that, with Frank Griffin dying, I doubt they're going to bring it back out. I've heard that question quite a few times. But, you never know. You see a lot of things like taking spin-offs off of one series and another. I just saw a billboard of The Mayans, which Sons of Anarchy is probably one of my all-time favorite shows that I've ever watched. And now Mayans, So you never know what can happen. And more importantly, the people that you meet on these sets and in this business, and the connections you can make and the friendships you can establish and cultivate, I think that's much more important, and those type of things can maybe lead to other things. So
nicely put. And there's always prequels. They always do prequels. Maybe they could do a Godless prequel. We could find out what happened before all that.
That's a good thought right there. Coming out west or something, who knows?
That's right. So I feel like the reason that you moved to LA was so you could do more surfing.
Yeah. Yeah, just like the acting bug has bit me a few years back. I was here like I said, in May. Well, actually, to backtrack a little bit, I took up surfing. It was a one-day crash course on Hawaii during my honeymoon with my wife, Sarah. I ended up surfing maybe 2 or 3 days on that same beach on Kauai. And then 4 years later, so this May, I came out and was staying with my wife's cousins up in Ventura. They were equipped enough and nice enough to lend me all the gear. I'm like, I need to get back into surfing. And then once I started doing it on a more frequent basis, now I feel like I've also been bit by the surfing bug, where I'm like trying to go out there as much as I can. I growing up at the ocean, I really have a deep connection with the ocean. The time I spent in Turkey at the ocean, that's something that I've always missed in Central Europe, as well as in New Mexico. New Mexico is a fantastic place, but my natural affinity has been much more towards the ocean, so I'm actually kind of happy to be out here. If I can't get in the water and surf or swim or snorkel or scuba dive, I can also take a stroll or just listen to the ocean, and it actually feels deeply fulfilling to me.
Yeah, when I was there a few months ago, I went to Santa Monica and just walked on the beach. I mean, it was just gorgeous. So you're in a beautiful place, man. Yeah, that's true. It
seems like a very well kept secret. It was amazing. It's kind of like, I heard it's only about 100,000 people, so it's kind of, I'm likening it to the Santa Fe of California, although they say it's actually Santa Barbara is much more like the Santa Fe. But I think Santa Barbara is much, much richer than Santa Fe, New Mexico even. So I meant more size-wise and kind of easygoing, I like Ventura a lot. I wouldn't mind actually maybe spending some more time there in the future. So.
Well, that's cool. How is the ocean different in Europe than, say, L.A.?
Oh, Pacific is the Pacific, right? There's no other ocean like it. It's just if you believe in energy and how it feels and so forth, just the difference in feeling is quite astounding. I think the presence of the Pacific is much more raw, if I want to put it that way. It's stronger. There's, of course, a lot of similarities. The European oceans, typically in Turkey, the Aegean is beautiful. The Marmara Sea, where I grew up, is also very pretty. Then you have the Mediterranean. But the Pacific and the Atlantic are typically a lot colder, I think, much stronger in currents. Although I have a very strong affinity for the ocean, and I'm a strong swimmer. I used to be on swim teams in high school. I always have great, great respect for the ocean. Anything can happen. Anything can come up. Doesn't matter how good or strong a swimmer you are. You always have to respect the ocean for its wildlife. You never know what can happen for any type of purpose, So you just, when you're in the water, it takes a lot of energy. A friend of mine just recently took up acting, took a one-day course, and she was all excited. Trina, she was also on Godless. She came up and spent the day in Ventura. We hired a coach for 2 hours, and within about 45 minutes, an hour, she was quite tired because she hadn't been used to that ocean, the currents, and, so you have to pace yourself in the ocean.
Well, that is a definite reason for me to not even try. Terrified of the ocean. Also, I'm terrified of the ocean.
That's a lot. I get that from a lot of people. Lots of my friends. Sometimes it's based on a bad experience where they hurt themselves or they saw a shark, but other times it's just that vast open water that you just don't know what can come up. And if you have a fear, I don't think somebody like me who doesn't necessarily have a panic or a fear can explain it away. It's just, I respect that. There are other things to do. What do you like doing?
I love podcasting.
I've golfed a few times. I have to admit, I'm terrible at it. I like it, though, because if you go early, especially in New Mexico where it gets kind of hot, if you go early in the morning or late in the evening when it's nice and cool and you have these beautiful lawns and trees, and then you can just socialize and hang out and hit the ball a few times. But I have to be honest, I should not try to pursue it professionally ever.
Well, I'm right there with you, man. I'm so bad, I shouldn't even play with my friends.
God, yeah, that'd be me. I think this one time I set a ball up on the little tee and I swung it, and I don't know how I did it, but there was like a sign not 50 feet away from not even 30 feet away from where I was swinging, and I hit this little signpost and the ball bounced right back at me.
That's awesome.
I'm like, I couldn't do that if I tried.
That is hilarious. As we're winding down, what do you got going on in the future? I know that you're getting into the LA scene. You're moving
right
in and trying to get a lay of the land. What can we look forward to seeing you in the near future?
Well, I'm going to be working on. Most recently, I was on. They're filming. I think the working title is still Old Story. It's going to be Messiah, another Netflix show. They called me back randomly and offered me a very small scene. I was an accident golfer there, having a little fight with another accident golfer. So I'm going to be in that. And then, unfortunately, that's another series that didn't get renewed. Was on NBC. I got to be on The Brave, and I never thought that I would actually get to speak my dad's native language, Turkish. Played a Turkish detective on one of the episodes. Unfortunately, the series did not get renewed. I was really hoping that it would get renewed because it was taking place in that part of the world where I was thinking maybe there had been another chance that I could have been cast again as a Turkish detective. I was enjoying the role. But this Messiah scene is going to be, off the top of my head, I don't remember which episode it was, but I'm going to be on that.
Very cool. And do you have any, are you on social media at all? Where can we find you on social media?
Instagram and then Facebook, but that's much older and I usually just keep like friends around on that, but it's mainly Instagram these days.
All right, gotcha. Scroll down in the show notes, guys, and his Instagram tag will be there. Reach out and say hi and tell him you heard him on here. Tell him you heard him on Fascination Street. Before I let you go, Ali, is there anything that I didn't ask you or we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about?
I think we actually touched on a lot of different interesting topics. I want to thank you for having me on the show. It was amazing. Thank you for the opportunity to just bring a little bit of story because everybody's story is interesting. And that's what I like about your show. I watched a couple of the podcasts. Tecumseh number 2, I think, was the one I was listening to right before you called, just to get an idea of what you're doing there. And, of course, I wasn't familiar before moving. But I think it's, like you said, it's actually there's always a good story everywhere. And the more we learn, the better we can make this place for everyone,
I'm with you, buddy. Thank
you very much for having me today.
Well, it was my pleasure, Ali. You have a great rest of your evening, and thank you so much for hanging out with us, man.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you do the same.
Take it easy, Ali. Bye.
Take care. Have a nice day. Bye.
Good morning, Detective Lynn. It has been 120 hours since your last login. Current grid load is 192 per terabyte. System anomaly detected. System. Current trans time is 1800 hours and 34 minutes. Maintenance outage for node 4.3.1.1 scheduled for 0400 hours and will persist for 38.9 minutes. Destination loci. Synchronized. Insertion in 3, 2, 1.
Rumor is there's a new V-drug experience in the trance. Something mind-bending and a little bit deadly. but I didn't have to tell you that. Things aren't adding up. You noticed all the burners going missing lately? How about the bodies showing up in the little dark corners of the city? I've seen this before, and it's why I'm here now, Detective Lynn. How about I tell you a scary story?
The Trance, a Phil Rossi podcast experience. For details, episode downloads, and story extras, visit www.patreon.com/Phil Rossi and sign up today.
Hey guys, just a quick break in here to let you know that I'm a member of Phil's Patreon page, and I think you should be too. So here's what I'm going to do. Everybody who signs up this month, October 2018, to join Phil's Patreon page, send me a screenshot of the Welcome to Phil Rossi's Patreon page to fascinationstreetpod@gmail.com and include your mailing address, and I'll send you a sweet surprise thank you from Fascination Street Podcast. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2014 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is Apollo from the 2001 album Into the Known by the band Sapphire. Thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit about our guest. We'll see you next time on Fascination Street.